Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has finally entered the presidential race, and I am excited to be joined today by New Hampshire House Majority Leader Jason Osborne to talk about it and his endorsement of the governor. You're listening to New England Take. I'm your host, AJ Kierstead. Like and subscribe if you're checking this out on YouTube. Check out the podcast version of the show also on all major podcast platforms. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me again, AJ. Good to talk to you.
So it was not exactly the smoothest announcement last night. We're recording this on Thursday, and it was plagued by 25 minutes of technical issues. I'd say many people are comparing it to the Howard Dean. Howard Dean, that's his name.
Right.
It seems like that to me, which I think he was floundering anyway, so I don't think that's a comparable comparison. But he's been catching more flack about that than anything else with regards to his announcement.
How about compare it to every single Trump rally where he shows up an hour late? Right. I mean, this is what we're used to from candidates for any kind of event. They're always late. They keep you waiting. This one wasn't even his fault. This was just there were so many people there that Twitter crashed. So they got it back up and running, and it took them a little bit of time, and then it was off to the races. So I don't think it was anything that anyone's going to care about other than the supporters of other candidates who will use it as a way to make fun of him.
Yeah, I mean, Carolyn Leavitt was jumping on as saying that DeSantis is jumping on this half-ready product and this new media landscape that's not ready for it. Like, that's the entire way Trump blew up. It was Twitter. Twitter is the reason why Trump became Trump and was so widely reviled and admired, depending on what side of the Trump debate you're on.
Yeah, I mean, she's talking about a platform that we all use every day. Every time I log into Twitter, there's all kinds of different spaces going on that you can jump into. It's just we're not used to a million people trying to get into one at the same time. And
I mean, there were literally some people were saying like there were more than 700,000 people jumping on that original stream. I mean, this was bigger than anything that would have been on a cable news broadcast. I mean, it definitely paid off with regards to getting him attention. I thought overall his presentation, even though it was audio only, which I figured they would have figured video out for this, which is kind of disappointing, but his presentation was good. It was typical political speak. I thought it was very, it was supposed to be this open discussion where it was, he's going to get some pushback and a little back and forth. It wasn't that whatsoever. It's Chris Rufo and Thomas Massey and such. So it was very friendly around DeSantis people that were talking to him, but I thought it was very presidential or governor-like in the way he presented himself.
Yeah, I certainly thought so. And you can imagine if they would have tried to do video, how many more technical issues there would have been. So I think that part of it went off well. Like with any candidate, when he was reading from his script, that wasn't quite as powerful as the rest of it when he was just answering questions, which I have on good authority were not scripted. So that's when Ron is going to be at his best, when he's natural, off the cuff, and just answering questions. The only problem he's got is he needs to learn how to not take 15 minutes to answer every question. He can keep it a lot shorter, I think. But you can tell he's just so excited to answer the question that he just can't contain himself. So, and I think that's what voters are going to identify with when they do get a chance to interact with him.
So I really have to ask, why did you decide to endorse him so early? Because it didn't make sense to me politically. I mean, I didn't think it made sense necessarily politically for Trump to announce his own presidential campaign months ago. Let me preface that also. I thought that was bananas for him to do. But why are you in New Hampshire, first in the nation primary? Very important here. We're still ways away from that happening when you could really I feel like personally you could have given him a more powerful boost if we were closer to the primary for you to jump in this way.
Sure. I mean, well, the real problem is President Trump already got this campaign started way earlier than he should have. And so we're all just kind of forced to play along. Otherwise, he's going to just keep rolling that ball down the hill. And then there's not going to be any stopping him when we get to the time when people would normally be getting into the race, like June, July. So, when I saw members of my caucus latching themselves onto the President Trump reelection campaign, I realized we were going to be in big trouble because I need to have winners at the top of the ballot in order to fill the House with Republicans. And if we have President Trump on that ballot again, it is going to be an extremely uphill battle to try to maintain the majority, let alone build the majority.
Yeah, as we saw definitely during the last election, where for the midterm, where the Trumpy candidates did not do well, and if on the state level, if we're dealing with a ton of Trumpy candidates versus, and that's it for the Republican side versus the Democrats, that slim majority that you're lucky to have right now over at the state house is going to be really in trouble.
Right. You just look at the state representative races from the last election. We had to outperform our federal candidates by a number of points in order to get ourselves elected. And that's just untenable on an ongoing basis. And so I'm tired of just leaving these federal primaries up to chance and then just dealing with the results. It's time to take some initiative and make sure we have winning candidates when we get through the process.
When I prefaced when I was scheduling you for the show, I kind of phrased it, we need to address the Trump in the room, because he's definitely an elephant in the room that no one can ignore, because he's going around bashing everyone around him that has the slightest bit of chance of going against him, which is the reason why it kind of shows DeSantis really having at least some leverage over the Republicans in the country right now, is the amount of lashing out Trump is doing against him, in my opinion. But why not Trump? Like when you go beyond just the guy's nuts, in my opinion, why are you going with DeSantis over Trump overall?
Yeah, look, I'm trying real hard not to be mean about the guy or to disparage his record or anything like that. But he's just not doing it for people anymore. I was really excited when he got elected in 2016. I thought we were in a new world where we could say the things we mean and mean what we say and not have to worry about getting canceled. And, that world just never materialized. People got tired of his routine. I've been comparing him to your favorite comedian, where, he puts out a CD and you put it in your car and you listen to it, 20, 30 times. And then eventually you're just kind of done with it. And if he doesn't put out another CD in 10 years, well, you're not just going to, keep going back to it. You're going to find someone new to listen to. So I think that's where we're at right now. And it's time to find new leadership to move us into the next chapter for America.
How do you think you're going to be able to convince the MAGA Republicans right now that are in the Republican base to side over with DeSantis? I mean, do you basically feel like you got to wait till is it a before or after primary thing where you really focus on getting their buy-in?
Well, it's going to have to be after, and that's again why I'm trying real hard not to be negative toward Trump or his supporters, even though, man, a lot of them are really engaged in some very just detrimental behavior, and I hope they can learn to maybe take it down a notch and keep it friendly. Thinking back to the 2016 Trump campaign, it was a lot more playful.
Yeah.
And it's taken a nasty turn. And, I have some sympathy for these folks because they were brutalized over the course of a number of years by the Democrats and the anti-Trump establishment. But that's really no excuse to just take those tactics and turn them on fellow Republicans. It's not good for the party. It's not good for America.
And what's your opinion on the Stop the Steal movement? Like I've openly said repeatedly, there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud, but just that messaging overall, what effect do you think it's going to have on New Hampshire?
Well, if we can leave it in the past, I think we'll be okay. If folks want to continue carrying that agenda forward, I think it's going to be problematic. And there are certainly issues with our voting system in terms of security and transparency and reliability. But to just make claims about elections being stolen, it's hard to justify that. And I mean, it's just as easy to imagine that our side is doing the stealing than their side. So let's clean the system up, make it so that everyone can rely on it, and stop accusing each other of stealing.
So let's talk policy here. I mean, this is going to be one of the confusing aspects, I feel like, when it comes to the different candidates right now that are running for president on the Republican side of the House. They agree on a fair bit when it comes down to it. At least the mainstream candidates. Ramaswamy has his own things that he's focusing on. For example, Nikki Haley is neocon and wants to bomb everyone, but that's beside the point. Between Trump and DeSantis, I mean, what do you think really separates the two of them and makes DeSantis maybe a step above Trump, especially because when it comes down to it, how these candidates get along with people and things like that, yeah, they're important. But ultimately, we're voting for someone that's going to be running the country.
Yeah, sure. And every candidate is going to have a different personality, different set of strengths and weaknesses that they're going to have to play to and against and use against their opponents as well. And, I think the key differentiator between the two, as far as actually doing the job of being president, is around competency. Right. I think President Trump did a lot of great things for this country. But when you look at a lot of the decision making that took place back then, it really leaves you to question, what was going on behind the scenes. I mean, when you have an agenda that you are espousing, and then you turn around and hire people to implement those agendas that are diametrically opposed to your worldview, I just don't understand what they were trying to accomplish there. Just to throw out a name, John Bolton, right? How did that happen? Where did that come from?
There's like immediate hate for that guy too, even from Trump. Like, what on earth are you thinking? Like, this guy has wanted to just take over the Middle East ever since he was in the political discourse forever ago. I mean, what policies specific to DeSantis, maybe that were successful in Florida, really stand out to you and think might be very productive, at least for the discourse at the federal level?
Sure. Well, just to take a big step back, a president or a governor cannot do very much just by themselves, right? They need to have a legislature that's feeding them good lawmaking for them to enact and execute. We saw Ron DeSantis win his reelection by a historic margin and bring along an entire supermajority legislature along with him that was aligned with his vision. And so it really enabled them to go full steam ahead, delivering results for the people of Florida. Now, those same policies that they did in Florida are not going to work for New Hampshire, and they're not going to work for New York or Alabama or Connecticut or any other state, right? But the principle, though, of winning, electing a legislature, and delivering the results that your constituents are looking for is it's going to go over well with the American people when he brings it to them.
Yeah, and I think also there's, like you said, the importance of having a legislature that he can get things done with. As someone who's a little less aggressive in the way he addresses campaigns at the state level is going to be very important. It's going to make it a lot easier for Republicans in the long term to be able to begin to be viewed a little more in the mainstream, because they've just been villainized because of the MAGA movement, in my opinion, to such an extreme point where anytime I say something, and I'm someone who, the only thing I really like about Trump is I think he's entertaining, and that outside of that, he did some good things when he was in president from a policy perspective, but the consistency is really the big problem with him, and his aggressiveness towards everything. It really hurts states from being able to just have a normal person that isn't just a showman have any success. What do you think? If we're getting closer to the end of the year, there's been some discussions back and forth, the candidates are finally all in the field, what are your chances you think that DeSantis is going to be able to win New Hampshire? Like, what's your feel on New Hampshire thus far on how people are just going to get in line and actually support one person like DeSantis?
Yeah, so I mean that's the bet I'm making, but there's obviously a long road between here and the end of the line. I mean, who knows what could happen? I mean, some other candidate could emerge and just take off for reasons that we just can't explain. And you touched on it a minute ago. President Trump is an entertainer. I mean, I find him hilarious, but I do recognize that I do not represent a majority of the electorate. And so he cannot win. And, governing is not about entertaining, even though, sadly, that's what people are interested in. So can we shift the electorate away from wanting to be entertained to wanting to have competent and good governance? And that remains to be seen. And I hope to do my part to help.
New Hampshire House Majority Leader Jason Osborne, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, no problem. Anytime.
New England Take, I'm your host, AJ Kierstead. Like and subscribe to the show. Check out the podcast feed, and definitely go to thenewenglandtake.com to get everything else we have going on. I'm your host, AJ Kierstead. We'll talk to you next week.